Hello, hello, hello. So we are back. We are on day 4. We are going to jump right back in with Miss Rachel Gentile, the last person to speak with Trayvon Martin the night of the incident. She's a she's a feisty one. So, she's actually been a lot of fun to just keeping the entertainment going. So, yeah, not going to do a recap of all 4 days so far. You can go back and watch, but it might be starting to pick up the pace a little bit. I think we're getting into some nitty gritty things. Hopefully. Otherwise, it's just been logistics and, those things. So, but yeah, let's get it going. Ryan.
Twitter's tweets, blogs, or social networking pages about the case.
So she is in the start. So all of these videos are broken down into bits and pieces, as you've figured out by now, if you've been following along in the orders of which I've done them. Sometimes I put them together. Sometimes I just do them as they come, depending on how much time I have while I'm doing them. And if it just, kind of makes sense. So, she goes through this whole video in some of the next one. So I'm just gonna go through this one and jump right into the next one to finish up with her. And then I'll probably end day 4 video 1 on her, and then depending on how long the other videos are and what they are, I might combine them or see what they got going on. I haven't looked ahead. I'm trying to do this with fresh eyes and ears. I don't want to be, like I said, even though this trial is 10 years old and I do know the outcome, I don't know how they got there or really the ins and outs of it all. So I just, figured, this is a good way for me to kind of start doing things and learning StreamYard, learning the things before I, try to get into maybe live streaming and doing other videos and trying to gussy up some things. So it's just kind of like my tester thing and maybe trying to entertain some people at the same time. So hopefully it's working. I'm enjoying it. So there's that. So yeah, let's get her going.
No hands are being raised. Thank you very much. Ms. Gentile, good morning. I'm going to remind you that you're still under oath. When you took your oath yesterday, it remains in effect. Mr. West, you may proceed.
We had this conversation yesterday. Speak into the little microphone.
Just need a little space. Good morning.
Good morning.
She doesn't look much happier today.
Yesterday, we were talking about an interview that you gave to Mr. Crump over the telephone.
Yes.
And we had focused on a part of that interview where you were telling Mr. Crump what Trayvon Martin said that you heard, "Why are you following me?" What you said that he said, correct?
Yes.
And that The
But
first
you
thing
said, he
that you
said,
told Mr. Crump that you heard from Mr. Zimmerman was, what are you talking about? Remember saying that yesterday?
Yes.
And then that changed to, what are you doing around here?
No, I'm gonna object this to.
Rephrase
going
this
over-
to the word changed.
Pardon me?
Rephrase your question, the objections to the word changed.
The first time you answered the question, what did you hear? You said that the other man, Mr. Zimmerman, said, what are you talking about? Remember that being your answer?
no.
I don't remember. Yes. I don't remember, but yes.
You saw that on the deposition and you agreed that's what you'd said.
Yes.
And then when asked again, or when you were talking about that same thing again, instead of saying, what are you talking about? It became, what you doing around here? Correct?
Yes.
And then at your deposition, when I took your deposition, you said in the letter that you
No, I'm
wrote,
gonna object again as to restating what occurred yesterday as opposed to asking a question.
Okay, it's a preliminary question. I'll allow it. From an overnight recess. Just to set
Lord,
where we are.
in your
semantics.
deposition, you said, in fact, that in the letter.
But
that
now you
wrote
wanna
to Sabrina
object.
Fulton, you
This
said
lady done sat here and
what you're
said
doing
so many
around here
different things,
was
went on a
what you
whole
attributed to Mr.
narrative.
Zimmerman.
Yes.
You could have shut
At
her
your
down a long
deposition is
time
we-
ago.
When we learned for the first
But you
time
let her
that you had
just-
written a letter.
Yes.
You had never said that in any of your other statements.
No.
There's been a lot of that.
Letter was the one that you and your friend put together, the one that you gave to Ms. Fulton on March 19th.
Yes.
And you had never mentioned that to anyone prior to you mentioning it to us in Miami in March of this year.
It was a personal letter for her.
Of course, I know that's what you said. You didn't even tell the prosecutor about it?
No.
You met with the prosecutor, though, in Jacksonville in early August, correct?
Yes.
And that's when you told him, oh, I didn't go to the hospital. I lied about that.
Yes.
But you didn't tell him you'd written the letter?
No.
May I have the letter, please? I can look real quick.
Oh, damn.
Marked as defendant CC for identification. Let me approach you for a moment and show you this letter. It's a copy, of course. Will you take a look at it?
I have no objection to it being introduced. in evidence.
Are you seeking to have it introduced?
Yes.
Okay, it'll come into evidence as defendant's next. I don't, 17, thank you.
Should we mark it?
I mean, he was just showing it.
Okay.
I mean, maybe give him a chance to say, I would like to admit this as evidence. Fuck. Oh, they got the lady passing out water.
Letter is now marked as Defendant's Exhibit 17. And let me then ask you a few questions about that.
I'm going to object to this witness, the letter. There's a reason why, and I don't want to make a speaking objection, but
Okay, well, please approach.
The class wants to hear. What are you doing? Cat is just. Look at him. Look at the kitty cat.
Ms. Dantel, would you take a look at that copy of the letter and let me ask you a couple of questions about it? Do you recognize that letter as being one that you said earlier was prepared to be given to Ms. Fulton?
Yes.
And that letter was prepared with the assistance of a friend of yours named Francine Serve?
Yes.
And you and Ms. Serve talked about what you wanted to be in the letter, and then she helped write it in a way that was legible, correct?
Yes.
But the contents of the
damn.
letter are yours.
Yes.
Are you able to read that copy well enough that you can tell us if it's in fact the same letter?
No.
Are you unable to read that at all?
Some I do not.
Can you read any of the words on it?
I don't understand. Cursive. I don't read cursive.
Did you sign it at the bottom?
Yes.
What name did you use?
Diamond Eugene. Diamond Eugene. Diamond Eugene.
Are you saying that,
I have no objection. This thing keeps flashing right here on the computer. I wonder if we could do something. I don't know if it's
Without
distracting.
putting the screen up, can we take the flashing off?
So it's not that she's illiterate; she can't read cursive.
your name that you signed at the bottom?
Yes.
But it's not actually your name.
No.
That's a name that you made up,
That's my nickname.
but your last name isn't Eugene.
That's my mother.
Right,
Last
so
name.
you signed a Diamond Eugene so as not to use your real name?
Yes.
I'll read the letter then. Can you not read this here?
Yes.
What does that say?
March the 19th, 2012.
And can you read this at the bottom?
Thank you.
And then you signed your name.
Yes.
And you can't read any of the words here?
Not all of them.
But you can read typewritten words, just not cursive?
Yeah.
Subject to correction by the state, the letter reads as follows. I was on the phone when Trayvon decided to go to the corner store. It started to rain, so he decided to walk through another complex because it was raining too hard. He started walking, then noticed someone was following him. Then he decided to find a shortcut.
There's an objection here.
Should be then, you stated he.
Would you like to read it?
I don't mind, but I don't mind you reading. I think.
Okay, direct your comments to me, please. Go ahead and read and correct the sentence.
Would you like to read it?
I should take.
Then Tiki.
I was on the phone when Trayvon decided to go to the corner store. It started to rain, so he decided to walk through another complex because it was raining too hard. He started walking, then noticed someone was following him. So I'll read that again. I was on the phone when Trayvon decided to go to the corner store. It started to rain, so he decided to walk through another complex because it was raining too hard. He started walking, then noticed someone was following him. Then he decided to find a shortcut because the man wouldn't follow him. Then he said the man didn't follow him again. Then he looked back and saw the man again. The man started getting closer. Then Trayvon turned around and said, "Why are you following me?" Then I heard him fall. Then the phone hung up. I called back and text, no response. In my mind, I thought it was just a fight. Then I found out this tragic story. Thank you, Diamond Eugene. Is that the letter that you and Ms. Sir prepared to give to Sabrina Fulton?
Yes.
And contrary to what you said at the deposition, this letter does not in fact contain any response that the person gave to Trayvon Martin when he said, "Why are you following me?"
Yes.
Further, you say that you thought this was just a fight.
Yes.
This was the letter that you gave to Ms. Fulton on the same day that you talked with her and told her basically what happened.
Yes.
And you told her, I take it, then the same thing that you said here, or did you tell her more?
Tell her more.
Did you tell her that the man that Trayvon said, "Why are you following me?" to responded in some way?
Yes.
And what did you tell her that he said?
Repeat your question again.
Mhm. Did you tell Ms. Fulton what the man said when Trayvon Martin said, "Why are you following me?"
Make the questions easier.
Did you say to Ms. Fulton what the man said in response?
Yes.
And what did you tell her?
What you doing around here?
I'm sorry.
What are you doing around here?
So that's what you told Ms. Fulton.
Yes. In the car. Yes.
And you're sure you actually had a conversation with Ms. Fulton?
Not
Where-
for that long. Not for that long.
Agreed. I'm not challenging that, but you're saying that you had a conversation about the facts of the case, if you will.
Yes.
And those facts included you saying that Mr. Zimmerman said, "What you doing around here?"
Yes.
He probably said, "What are you doing around here?"
You do acknowledge, though, the first time that you were asked that question in your interview with Mr. Crump later that day, your response was that Mr. Zimmerman said, "What are you talking about?"
Yes.
Then again, he probably said, "What are
Are you
you
sure
talking
those were the
about?"
words that Trayvon Martin said, or could you have been sort of trying to figure out what was said and that's what you came up with?
I'm sure.
Which are you sure about? That he said,
Why
"What are you
following-
talking about?" or "Why are you following me?"
Why are you following me, Bo?
But-
Why are you following me? What Trayvon said, why are you following me for?
But you first said in response to that question, "What are you talking about?" was the answer.
I cannot hear you, sir. I cannot hear you, sir.
Bullshit.
Your testimony today is what you heard on the phone, the man say that
I can hear him
George Zimmerman
fucking
was,
perfectly. Can't
"What are you doing
hear
around here?"
you.
Yes.
And then the first statement that you made to Mr. Crump in his interview of you, you said what Mr. Zimmerman's response was, "What are you talking about?"
Yes.
It was in the interview with
So he said,
Mr.
"Why are
Crump
you following
that you
me?"
said
And
you
George
thought this
said,
was a racial.
"What are you talking
thing.
about?"
He had asked me if it was a racial thing.
What did he say?
Do you think
Woo!
this situation was a racial thing? And I
Mr. Crump asked you that on the recording.
yes.
Have you had a chance to look at the transcript or listen to the recording? Did you ever hear him say that on the recording?
There are limits to the compound
Yeah, you need to
questions.
break your question up.
Sure.
Yeah,
Do you
you
remember
do.
him saying that specifically to
Maybe
you
not.
during that phone interview? Have you ever seen a transcript of the recording or ever listened to the recording to know whether or not, in fact, it's
Still here.
Yes.
And is it there?
No.
But your comment is that you think it's a racial thing.
Yes.
So in other words, Mr. Crump didn't record that part of the conversation where he
The
asked you if you
world
thought it
thinks
was
it's
a racial thing, but
thing.
only recorded your answer when you said you think it's a racial thing.
Objection as to what Mr. Crump did or did not do.
Sustained.
And compound.
She can't testify what he thought. She can only testify as to what she heard. The question is, did Mr. Crump ever do that? If she's not around and there's no way for her to know if he did that when she's not there, she could testify as to what she heard.
Yes, what I'm focusing in on is this. You believe that Mr. Crump asked you in that recorded interview whether you thought it was a racial thing.
Yes. For sure.
And then when you've had a chance to listen to the recording or look at the transcript, you can't find his question anywhere in it.
No.
You have had a chance, though, to review your transcripts or prior statements, haven't you?
Yes.
So you decided it was a racial thing because someone told you it was a racial thing, or you came up with this on your own, or why did you conclude that this was a racial thing?
How the situation happened
How about what was being said on the news?
on the news.
Mhm.
The interview between me and Crump happened before the news even knew about it. Before nationwide knew about the situation.
So your belief is that you had the interview with Mr. Crump before this story was in the news about George Zimmerman racially profiling and murdering Trayvon Martin.
Yeah.
You never heard that before.
I told you I watched the news.
Well, how about when you talked with Tracy Martin? Did he say, "Would you please come forward because we are saying this is a racially motivated murder"?
No. He just asked me, can I talk to his attorney?
How about when you talked to Ms. Fulton? Did she say, "Would you please come forward and talk to our attorney and record it because we think this is a racially charged event"?
No.
And you didn't have any information from the news that this was a racially charged event?
No, I told you I watched the news.
Okay. Are you okay this morning?
Yeah.
You seem so different than yesterday. Just checking. Did someone talk with you? Yes. Did someone talk with you last night about your demeanor in court yesterday?
No, I went to sleep.
So your testimony is that you hadn't heard anything on the news about this being a racially charged incident.
No, Objection, asked and answered. I was repeating the answers.
Sustained.
I mean,
No.
You didn't know anything about this case on the news following the shooting on February 26th, prior to your interview with Mr. Crump on March 19th.
No, sir. I had told you that yesterday.
Mhm.
I don't watch the news.
And no one else told you that
No,
there was a
sir.
lot of noise about this being a racially charged event.
No, sir.
So when you answered Mr. Crump's question, that's not on the recording, what you think about it being a racially charged event, you said, yes, it was.
Yes, sir.
And what did you base your answer that you thought it was a racial thing? What information did you base that on?
Because how the situation happened.
Tell me, what is it about this event specifically that convinced you it was racially based? Right.
Another area.
So what you know about this whole event is what Mr. Martin told you and what you interpreted it to mean.
Objection, argumentative. That's the question.
Overruled.
Repeat your question. again.
Sure. That you didn't see anything, you weren't there.
No.
You still don't know where the mail thing is, or where any of the streets are, or where on the map Trayvon Martin was staying, correct?
No.
You don't know how far the man was from him at any given point in time.
He wasn't that far because Trayvon told me that the man was just is watching. Somebody just watching him, and then he described the person that was watching him and following him, and that was kind of strange. And the person keep watching you and following you,
So he
like
said,
he being stalked, like he's being stalked from the person. That person
what makes that racial?
that would it make that racial? It was made that racial.
What's one thing about what Trayvon Martin told you that made you think this was racial?
Describing the person.
Pardon me?
Describing the person.
I just didn't.
Describing the person that was watching him and following him.
I see.
Sir.
Describing the person is what made you think it was racial?
Yes.
And that's because he described him as a creepy ass cracker?
Yes.
So it was racial, but it was because Trayvon Martin put race in this.
No.
You don't think that's a racial comment?
No.
You don't think that creepy ass cracker is a racial comment?
No.
Well, you didn't mention it in your letter, correct?
That's just a personal letter to mama.
Right. You didn't tell
That's just a personal letter to the mother.
you didn't tell Ms. Fulton that the man that was following him was a creepy ass cracker, did you? You didn't tell Mr. Crump in the recorded interview that Trayvon Martin described George Zimmerman as a creepy ass cracker.
No.
Keep saying
And
it.
when you met with Mr. Della Rionda for the first time on April 2nd, 2012, you never told him in your interview that Trayvon Martin said a creepy ass cracker was following.
No. I just said creepy, sir.
Yes, I agree. You did say creepy.
Yes.
Okay. You got him.
So
You got
the
him
reason
there.
you didn't say that though was because you didn't think it was relevant.
Nobody asked. You come ask me what exactly that Trayvon said that night about the person that was following him and watching him. That's what you asked me when I met up with you.
So never before I met with you in March did you ever tell anyone exactly what you Trayvon Martin said? Correct?
About the person, describing the person?
Yes, in any of the interviews where you were asked what was said, what happened next,
What was said, yes, I did. What, by describing him? No, I did not. I
You
just
said
said creepy. No,
some dude's following.
One at a time, because the court reporter has to take down both voices. If you'll allow her to please finish her answer. Are you finished with your answer?
Yes,
Okay, you may ask your next question.
Of course, you wouldn't say it to Sabrina Fulton because it was offensive, correct?
yes, that was disrespectful. That
Pardon
was
me?
disrespectful.
Of
If
course
I
it
say
was,
to
yes.
him.
You may not consider it a racial comment, but it's
No.
certainly offensive, isn't it?
No,
You don't think calling someone a creepy ass cracker is offensive?
no,
So, but you specifically chose not to tell Ms. Fulton that's what Trayvon Martin said,
no,
because you thought it would hurt her feelings, didn't you?
no,
You didn't think that would bother her if you said that her son described the man that was following him in a car on the phone
I didn't think
was
that
a
was
creepy ass
important.
cracker?
I did not think that was important.
Not important enough to put in the letter, and
No,
not important enough to tell her.
Objection has been answered.
Move
Can we
on.
move on to another topic?
I mean, we could, but I'm not done.
Just to be clear then, you didn't include that in the letter, and you didn't include it in the conversation you had on March 19th with Ms. Fulton.
no,
And when you were interviewed by Mr. Crump later that day, you didn't say it.
no,
And then you were interviewed but you did say to Mr. Crump that you thought the event itself was a racial thing.
yes. He had asked me, and I said yes.
And I was asking you then, what made you think that? And then you were saying just because of the description, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
The description being there was a man on the phone in a car watching him.
yes.
And you met,
follow
you,
him.
pardon me?
And follow him.
Right, so you took that to be racial
Yes,
without any additional information.
no,
On April 2nd, you had an opportunity to meet with the prosecutor, correct?
yes,
Up until that point, you had never spoken with law enforcement.
no,
Even following your interview with Mr. Crump, you didn't then go to the police.
no,
Even after hearing part of your interview on national television, or hearing about it, you didn't go to the police.
no. I can't recall, but no, because my phone was,
I can't recall.
I can't recall, my phone was off. I shut it off.
Did you shut your phone off, are you saying, between March 19th
No, I
and,
shut it off. There was a lot of phone calls.
I'm sorry,
There was
was
a
it,
lot of phone
was it
calls.
disconnected?
No,
No, she turned it off
Turned it off.
because
You turned it off.
she was getting too many phone
How
calls.
long did you leave your phone off?
be 3, in a day, it'd be 3 hours or 4 hours.
Well, when you turned it back on, you would get voicemails, wouldn't you?
Yes.
You'd get any text messages,
I ain't getting no text message.
but you would, if someone had sent you one after you turned the phone on, you get your text messages.
Yes,
And when you turned your phone back on between March 19th and April 2nd, there weren't any text messages from Ms. Fulton telling you to please go to the police,
no.
or any messages from law enforcement saying, would you please
By me
contact?
watching the television, I thought the police was already in the case.
Say that again.
By me watching television, I thought the police already knew about the case.
So I didn't think you watched television, I'm sorry.
That was before
Mhm.
March the 19th. When March the 20th, that's when I started watching the television. That's when my voice became on television. That's when I started paying attention to the news.
So on March 20th, when they had the press conference about you,
No,
Is
I
when you
didn't see the press conference. They only showed half it, saying Trayvon Martin was on the phone with a final moments.
the news then you're talking about that had your voice on it was the recording made by ABC News?
Yes, I think.
Did you talk with somebody from ABC News separately from your interview with Mr. Crump?
Yes.
And when and where was that, please?
I don't remember, but it was by phone.
I don't remember that.
I don't remember, it was by phone.
And
Girl, stop
approximately
getting an
after
attitude. She
March
can't hear you.
19th was the day that you were interviewed. When did you, after that, talk with the reporter from ABC News?
I don't remember.
Roughly.
Before I even talked to the state attorney.
Sometime between March 19th, after when you gave your interview to Mr. Crump,
Yes.
and you didn't know you were being recorded then by ABC, correct?
No.
But after that, though, you had a separate phone interview with ABC.
Yes.
Was it the next day, the day after, a week later? Any idea?
No.
And who was it that you talked with?
I don't know his name.
Did he know your name?
He didn't know my real name.
What, did you give him a name?
He had told me.
I can't hear the witness. Would the court ask the
Could
witness?
you speak up a little bit, please?
He had told me he had got my number. Well, she had got my number from the ABC reporter. She had texted me saying she wanted to know about Trayvon, what kind of person he was. Can I have a talk with her boss, I think, about Trayvon, what kind of person he was.
So you got a text from somebody where the media wanted to talk with you further.
It was an ABC woman.
Right.
It was an ABC woman.
And then you gave,
She had called, she texted.
and then you agreed to have a separate recorded interview.
Yes.
And do you know the person that interviewed you?
No.
Did you tell them the name Diamond Eugene?
I just told him, he had asked me how do you want me to call me? He had asked me how he want me to say in the media. I said Dee Dee. That's when Dee Dee started popping up.
So you used the nickname Dee Dee to
Yeah.
identify yourself?
Yeah.
Did you tell that person how old you were?
He didn't ask me that.
He didn't ask you your real name?
No.
So that was sometime after March 19th, but before April 2nd, correct?
Yes.
And did you have any other interviews with anybody between the ABC interview and April 2nd?
No.
On April 2nd, you were interviewed by Mr. Della Rionda, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there were other agents there with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement?
Yes, sir.
So this was your first interview with law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
When you interviewed with Mr. Crump, you were rushed, you didn't take it seriously, and you weren't under oath, correct?
Yes, sir.
But on April 2nd, you were under oath,
Yes, sir.
and you were being interviewed by the police.
Yes, sir.
And it was recorded.
Yes, sir.
From the state attorney's office, now at this point, the Jacksonville State Attorney's Office was involved in the case as opposed to the Seminole County State Attorney's Office, correct?
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Della Rionda said, I'm from Jacksonville, I'm down here to interview you, and introduced you to the FDLE agents that were present and his state attorney investigator, Mr. Osteen.
Yes, sir.
And you already had met the other people in the room?
What other people?
Well, tell me, who else was in the room with you when Mr. Della Rionda was conducting the first interview by law enforcement?
Trayvon's mother.
Trayvon's mother, Sabrina Fulton, correct?
Yes.
Was in the room with you
Yes.
when Mr. Della Rionda was asking you questions for the first law enforcement interview.
Yes, sir.
And where was she in the room?
Beside me.
So she's sitting right beside you as Mr. Della Rionda is asking you questions as his office has been assigned to investigate this alleged murder case.
The objection?
Objection, he keeps repeating the answers that the witness previously gave as opposed to asking other questions, being repetitive, and also the nature of the questions.
Sustained.
May I have a little latitude on cross-examination,
Well,
please?
you're giving a lot of latitude as you're entitled to. The objection is because you repeat the answer of the last question in your new question. And I think that you're required to just ask a new question. If you want to ask another question that there's an answer, you may do so, but the objection is to continuing to repeat the answer in your new questions.
I apologize. My efforts to be precise so that the witness knows exactly what we're talking about, but I will try to do it a little differently.
Thank you.
It's just trying to help the girl out.
right beside you during this interview was Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Martin was also there, but not in the room, correct?
No, sir. He left before I stepped inside the living room.
He left the living room, in other words.
Yes, sir.
You don't know that he left the residence, though, do you?
No, sir.
He may have still been there, but just not in the room with you.
Yes, sir.
Also in the room was one or more Martin family attorneys, correct?
Yes, sir.
Who were they?
I don't know their name, sir.
You know Natalie Jackson?
Yes, sir.
Was she there?
On top of the stairs, yes, sir.
I'm sorry.
On top of the stairs.
So you knew she was there and present, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was Mr. Crump present?
No, he left before I even stepped inside the house.
But you saw him that night.
Not that night, that afternoon.
When you say that afternoon, tell me about that. I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. The interview itself took place in the early evening, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
So you met with Mr. Crump earlier that day?
No, sir.
Tell me then what you mean, that you saw him.
When he went to, when the detective and Miss Sabrina and
I'm sorry, we're detective again.
Miss Sabrina and he had joined in,
He had-
came with them to pick me up from my friend residence, so I could go back there to have an interview with the state. That's when I met Crump. That's my first time meeting Crump.
The other time it was only on the phone. When you
Yes,
talked with
when the interview, yes.
And this day, on April 2nd, 2012, you met him because he was one of the people that went to your friend's house to pick you up,
Yes,
to bring you to Miss Fulton's house, correct?
yes,
This interview actually took place at Sabrina Fulton's home in her living room, correct?
yes, sir.
So Mr. Crump came to your friend's home to pick you up along with
I
whom?
was outside already. I met him.
But of your friend's house.
Yes.
So
sir.
Mr. Crump came to get you, correct?
Now come and get me. He was in another car. And I was,
Two cars came to
with
get you.
detectives and stuff.
So that afternoon, Mr. Crump was in one of the cars that was dispatched to go pick you up.
Yes, sir.
And you were in the front yard of your friend's house.
Yes, sir.
And law enforcement also was involved in picking you up?
Yes, sir.
You don't know why then law enforcement would permit Mr. Crump to come with them.
That's argumentative beyond the witness's knowledge.
Sustained. It's beyond her knowledge.
I'm asking whether she knew or not, and she said no. If the court would give me a little leeway on this.
Ask your next question.
Do you
She's
know
never gonna
why
give you
law
leeway.
enforcement allowed Mr. Crump to come with them to pick you up?
No, sir.
Who else was there? Was Miss Fulton with them?
Yes, sir.
Do you know why law enforcement allowed Miss Fulton to be there?
Because she's the only person who knew where my friend lived at. She lived by my friend area.
Miss Fulton lives near where your friend lives,
Yes, sir.
but law enforcement had your phone number. They could have just called and asked you where you were, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Crump had your phone number. He could have called and asked where you were. Pardon me?
I don't know if Crump had my number.
I don't know.
I do not know if Crump had my number.
In the interview he took of you on March 19th, didn't he say, "We're having trouble with this phone, let me call you back,"
He had my number then.
from a 904 number? And he called you back on your phone.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gentile, I'm not saying you did anything wrong, so please don't take it that way. I'm trying to understand the
haven't.
dynamics of this, though.
I know I didn't know anything wrong, so
I'm sorry.
I know, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. If I'm harsh in my tone, it's not because I'm suggesting you did anything wrong here,
Mhm.
but I'm trying to understand what the overall context of this first law enforcement interview was. So the people that came to pick you up included law enforcement, but it also included Ben Crump and Sabrina.
Again, he's repeating the answer that the witness already gave.
Yeah.
Can we
Ask
approach
ask
that,
her the
please?
question. Just ask her the question, who was there?
I'd like permission to ask leading questions of this witness on cross-examination, one step at a time.
And I'm asking that you do it one step at a time.
My question is this, just to be clear as to who was present. Law enforcement, FDLE agents were present.
Yes.
Ben Crump was present. Sabrina Fulton was present in these two vehicles that came to pick you up on the afternoon of April 2nd, 2012.
Yes, sir.
And was Mr. Delarianda present?
I don't remember him. Like, I was in the back of the car.
Do you know of anybody else being present?
I do remember a tall dude,
I do remember.
a tall person.
A tall dude.
Did you ever see him again later that evening?
Yes, sir.
Was he in the room?
Yes, sir.
You don't recall his name, though.
TC?
TC. Do you know that person to be an investigator with Mr. Delarianda's office?
Yes, sir.
Was there anybody else?
In the car?
Either of the cars?
I don't know who was in the other car, but I did know who was in the car. It was,
I can't hear you, ma'am.
Could you speak a little louder?
I do not know who was in the other car, but I do know who was in the car I was in.
Let's start there then. Who was in the car with you?
TC, and I think he was in the car. I think he was in the car.
Mr. Delarianda?
Yeah, I did say a ball dude. No offense. And
Okay, we have a gentleman who didn't hear the answer. Could you please speak up? If you could face the microphone a little bit better.
She said he was
TC.
bald.
That's the wrong microphone. Yes, you try that. Just look at it.
TC, the front of the car was TC, bald-headed dude.
This
Yeah.
guy?
Yeah. Sorry, man. I didn't know you. And Sabrina and me.
And you went from your friend's house to Miss Fulton's house.
Yes, sir.
And the people that you've already identified so far were in the room
Bald-headed
with you
dude.
when the interview took place.
This
Yes,
guy.
sir.
Anybody else? Any other family members?
No, sir.
Any other lawyers?
Another lawyer from the Martin family.
Right. Remember kind of a big guy?
A big guy, yes, sir.
Do you know his name?
No, sir.
Would you know it if I said it?
No, sir.
No. So when the interview began in Miss Fulton's living room, you were seated next to Miss Fulton, and were the other people that you've identified other than Tracy Martin in the room then, or close by?
Yes, sir. Was in the living room.
I take it you knew that Miss Fulton would be hearing exactly what you said because you were sitting next to her.
Yes, sir.
And you certainly didn't want to say anything that you thought would hurt her feelings or make her grief even worse.
Yes, sir.
So because of that, you were very sensitive to Miss Fulton's feelings when you answered Mr. Delarianda's question.
Yes, sir.
And that is why, for example, that you cleaned up some of the language that Trayvon Martin used.
Yes, sir.
You wanted to be helpful because you wanted to help the prosecutor arrest George Zimmerman.
I never thought I was a witness, a serious witness around that time.
At that point, being interviewed by law enforcement under oath, you still hadn't concluded that you would be a witness in the case?
Not an important witness.
Not an important witness. Because of that, did that also shape some of the things you said and why you said them?
Yes,
So,
sir.
yes?
Yes, sir.
For other reasons, you didn't want to hurt Ms. Fulton's feelings, and that you really didn't think you were going to be an important witness in the case.
No, sir.
Is
Wrap
that
it up,
why
Baldy.
when Mr. Delarianda wanted to know what Trayvon Martin said, you said, "This man's watching me," rather than what he actually said?
Yes, sir.
You thought that would be offensive to Ms. Fulton and to the other people in the room?
Yes, Mr. Fulton.
Just Ms. Fulton?
Yes, sir.
So when you answered the questions that Mr. Delarianda asked you about what was said by whom, you were concerned about how Ms. Fulton would feel or react if you actually spoke the accurate words or the accurate truth.
Objection, the compound question is complicated.
Did you understand? I'm sorry. Did you understand my question?
the
Yes,
question?
sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, could you answer it?
No, sir.
Let me see if I can say it better then. When Mr. Della Rionda was asking questions about what happened and who said what, you were making it sound different than it actually was to keep from hurting Ms. Fulton's feelings.
Not all of them, sir.
I'm sorry.
Not all of them, sir.
Not all of the answers, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
But some of the answers.
Yes, sir.
Some of the answers about language, for example.
Yes, that's the only thing that I changed around. Yes, I did not
That's the only
say
thing that I changed around.
that. I did not say.
So the only thing that you didn't say that was accurate was the language that Trayvon Martin used.
Yes, sir. I didn't think it was that important. He did not ask me what was Trayvon. He did not ask me if Trayvon was describing the man. He just told me I didn't think it was that important at all. He had asked me, well, how Trayvon think the man looked. I said creepy. Oh, then I said it's creepy. I'm not going to say it in front of the whole world, in front of people.
You were going to say what Trayvon Martin actually said in front of his mother.
Yeah, that's disrespectful.
Of course. Of course. No one's arguing with you about that. But that's the decision that you made, was basically to clean it up.
Yes, sir.
You knew she was grieving. She had just lost a son. You were very sensitive to that, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, as you were explaining what happened and answering Mr. Della Rionda's questions with Ms.
Are you
Fulton
doing
sitting
that
there
with
right
your
beside you,
face?
she was crying, wasn't she?
Sure, just crying, just tearing up about when I start telling what happened that night.
Again, it's so hard to hear, but did you say that she meant she wasn't crying, but she was tearing up?
Yeah, just tearing up.
Tears coming out of her eyes.
Yeah.
Do you associate that with pain and grief and suffering?
Of course.
You also, though, told Mr. Della Rionda under oath that you'd gone to the hospital, correct?
He had asked me, did I go to the hospital? I said, yeah.
So I know that you had said that earlier to Mr. Crump and to Ms. Fulton to give a plausible explanation to them for why you didn't go to the memorial service or the wake. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then when Mr. Della Rionda asked you about it again, you gave the same answer,
Yes, sir.
but you knew that was a lie.
Yes, sir.
Again, you lied because you wanted to give a plausible answer to Ms. Fulton as to why you didn't go to the wake.
Yes, sir.
But on the April 2nd interview, you were in fact under oath,
Yes, sir.
and you knew that.
Yes, sir.
And you made a decision then, because of how difficult the situation you had just been put in, you decided to lie about going to the hospital rather than say something that might be painful.
Yes, sir.
Are
In the
you lying
interview-
now?
In the first conversation with Ms. Fulton on March 19th and in the letter on March 19th, at no time did you mention that you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that yes? You did not say that?
Yes, sir. What's your question again?
In the meeting you had, the conversation you had with Ms. Fulton on March 19th, before you did the interview later, and in the written statement that you and Ms. Cerf prepared for Ms. Fulton, a personal statement, in neither of those instances did you say that you heard Trayvon Martin say, as you said later, a little get off, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's because you didn't think that was important at that point?
Because Carl and Miss Fulton did not ask me. Carl and Miss Fulton did not ask me about when the fight started in the grass. They did not ask me about that. He asked me about that.
So when you decided what part of what you knew to tell Ms. Fulton, you decided not to tell her that part.
She didn't ask me.
Well, I'm not sure that that was her answer, so you need to re-ask the question. I believe she said they never asked her that.
Right now I'm asking about this witness's thinking. So when you
No,
decided what
she can
part
fix
of the information
it
that you had about the
if she
events on
thinks
the
it's
evening of February
wrong.
26th, you decided
if he
in what to
misstated
tell
her
Ms. Fulton,
testimony.
not to tell
She
her
can fix
that you'd
it.
heard a little get off from Trayvon Martin.
Objection, compound question, argumentative, and mischaracterizing what this witness has previously said.
Okay, as far as compound, do you understand the question?
No, ma'am.
Pardon?
No, ma'am.
Okay, you need to break it down then. She says she doesn't understand.
Okay. On March 19th,
Yes, sir.
you had a meeting with Ms. Fulton
Yes, sir.
out in front of her home.
Yes, sir.
You had already written the letter with Ms. Serve to give to her.
Yes, sir.
Lady, you're
Then
the
you
one that
wrote
said
the
you didn't
letter
understand.
About what happened
Don't
on
get
the
a whole
evening of
attitude.
February 26th and decided what to put in it. You made the decision not to include that you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off.
Yes, sir.
And then when you went to Ms. Fulton's house to talk with her, and she was so anxious to know what happened,
I
that
did
she
not go
needed
inside her house, sir.
to know that you're out front.
Yes, sir.
When you went to Ms. Fulton's house with the letter in hand to talk with her, and she so desperately wanted to know what had happened, you, among the things that you chose to tell her, decided not to tell her that you'd heard her son say a little get off on the phone.
Yes, sir.
And you're saying that's because she didn't specifically ask you?
No, sir.
Could you explain your thinking?
I didn't want to be there, sir.
Of all the things that you decided were important to
I
tell
didn't
her,
want to be
to
there.
write in the
She did
letter
not-
and to,
She did not ask me for examples,
She did not
ask me for examples,
She did
definition,
not ask me for
no,
example.
examples, reasons, none of that. The state asked me that. Court did not ask me that either. So, no, sir.
So
well, how would they
basically,
know to ask you
if you don't ask,
if you didn't tell them what
I'm
you
not
knew?
going to tell.
Objection, now, she's wanting the witness now to get in my mind as to why I asked something or not.
Okay, to the extent of her explaining why or why not the state did something, I'm going to sustain.
Whether or not someone specifically asked you, you made the decision not to volunteer that information.
I didn't think it was important. I was going to be asked about the
I
situation.
didn't think it was-
I did not think it was important, so I was not being asked for that situation, that part, so it didn't matter. He had asked me that. The state had asked me that.
All right, we'll talk about that in a little more detail in a minute, but let's progress now to the interview that you gave to Mr. Crump on the phone on March 19th, later the same day. You acknowledge that nowhere in that, what was it, about 30 minutes altogether?
He asked me,
The interview.
I don't remember.
You asked me. Oh,
But
I
nowhere during
mean,
that
you
interview
were the one.
did you say,
Right there.
in response to any question,
Pretty
specific
sure.
or general,
I'm asking
that
you.
you'd heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off.
He did not ask me when the fight happened. I had told him the phone had just shut off. He didn't ask me, did you hear when there was fighting going on? Did you hear something was going on between the fight? No, he did not ask me that. The state asked me that, sir.
Well, what you told Mr. Crump was that you heard Trayvon Martin say, "Why you following me?" And then you heard Mr. Zimmerman say either, "What are you talking about?" or "What are you doing around here?" And then you heard something that you described as sort of a bump, and that the phone cut off.
I had told him the bump, it gotta be his headset. His headset is always on his left ear. And
And
there's a
what,
speaker. to
yes,
talk to.
and what you said to Mr. Crump was, at that point, the phone cut off.
Yes, I kept it simple and quick.
Right, so once the phone cuts off,
I had called back.
There's nothing else that you have to say, correct? Because once the phone cuts off, you certainly can't hear anything else that might have been said because the phone had been disconnected.
Yes, sir.
So you told Mr. Crump that the phone cut off.
Yes, sir.
So if you say at the point where there was this exchange, the conversation, the exchange, and the bump, and the phone cut off, doesn't that leave the impression that there was nothing else you could hear after that?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't at that point say, oh, by the way, no, I heard more after that, actually.
They asked me more, sir. The state had asked me more, sir.
Well, are you saying then that when you told Mr. Crump that after you heard the bump and the phone cut off, that you decided not to tell him that after the bump, but before the phone cut off, you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, get off?
That's a compound question.
Do you understand the question?
Yes, ma'am.
You may answer.
Can you repeat the
Like I
question?
told you from the beginning, that interview, I think it lasted like 13 minutes. I don't know, but it didn't last for that long. So I had to rush on it because I really did not want to be on the phone, sir. So I did not take my time, and just like I took my time. I had more time when I was talking to the state. With Crump, no. So the question is no.
So of all of the things that you thought might be important for them to know about what you knew,
I had told
you
you.
decided not to say that before the phone shut off, you heard Trayvon Martin say a little get off, get off.
Objection asked and answered.
Okay, let's have it answered one more time and then move on.
May we approach the bench, please?
No, she can answer the question. Go ahead and answer.
Yes, sir.
So you made the decision then not to tell Mr. Crump that you'd actually heard Trayvon Martin say, get off, because you were in a hurry?
Objection asked and answered.
The word in a hurry is an additional part to that question, so I will allow it. You may answer.
Yes, sir. Because Crump is not law forces.
So you weren't worried about telling him, first of all, the truth
He's
or
not.
the whole story?
First of all, Crump is not law enforcement. He's not an officer. I knew that he was not an officer. So, like I told the mother from the beginning, if officer wants to talk to me, know the exact story, everything about what happened that night, they will reach me at my number. You got it?
Uh-huh.
If I got it, what I heard you to
You
say
got
is
it.
that you told Ms. Fulton that if they wanted to hear everything, that an officer, that you would tell everything to an officer.
Yes,
you
sir.
didn't.
But they didn't put an officer in contact with
I
you.
don't know about that, sir.
Well, you know you didn't get any messages or get any calls from an officer.
Objection asked and answered.
Overrule.
No, sir.
So when you were then talking with Mr. Crump in this recorded interview, for the first time ever being asked to tell the story about what you knew, you were in a hurry, and among the things that you chose not to say was that before the phone cut off, but after the bump, you heard Trayvon Martin say, a little get off, get off.
Objection asked and answered.
This will be the last time the question will be asked and answered. You may answer.
Yes, sir.
So let's move then to the April 2nd interview, where you did have a chance to tell Mr. Delarianda everything.
Yes, sir.
And that was your purpose?
Yes, sir.
This was the interview by law enforcement that you'd been waiting for,
Yes, sir.
that you knew was coming,
Yes, sir.
and that you were ready to tell everything just like it was,
Yes, sir.
even if that was different than what you'd said before.
I never thought that the interview would be was in another house with the mother. No.
I never thought the interview would be at the mother's house with the mother. No. Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
She said
Have you had a
he got
chance
it.
to read the transcript of your interview with Mr. Del Rionda on April 2nd, 2012?
No,
When's the last time you had a chance to look at it?
2 weeks ago.
Pardon me?
2 weeks ago.
When and where did that happen?
FDLE.
I can't hear you. Can you speak up just
I
enough?
said FDLE.
Girl.
The Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Yes, sir.
2 weeks ago at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, you had a chance to review the transcript of the interview you gave with Mr. Del Rionda.
No, listen to it. I had a chance to listen to it.
Oh, so you had a chance to listen to the recording.
Yes, sir.
This was at the FDLE in Miami.
Yes, sir.
And who was present, if anyone, from the state attorney's office?
No, sir. 2 detectives. 2 FDLE detectives.
Do you remember the date that this took place?
No, sir.
A couple of weeks ago, though, you went to FDLE in Miami and they gave you a chance to review the statement.
Yes, sir.
And did you?
Yes, sir.
Did you review any other statements at that time?
The interview I had with you. I watched the interview that I had with you.
That would be a videotaped deposition.
Yes, sir.
Did you have a chance or did you review any other material in anticipation of coming to court?
No, sir.
Did you review the transcript or listen to the recordings made by Mr. Crone?
No, sir.
So let's talk a little bit about the interview on April 2nd, 2012. But I know that you talked about, in this case already, and that you talked about in that interview, the idea that the phone kept hanging up that day.
Yes, sir.
So in other words, you and Trayvon Martin would be talking, and for no apparent reason, the call would be lost.
Yes, sir.
Not because you hung up, correct?
No, sir.
Or because that you know
Bad
of.
signal.
Pardon me.
Bad signal.
So you were plagued with a bad signal all day,
Yes, sir.
and you really never knew when the phone was going to disconnect.
No, sir.
And usually what would happen is that when the phone disconnected, one or the other of you would call each other back.
Yes, sir.
So throughout the course of the day, you wound up actually speaking with each other several hours.
Yes, sir.
What you remember about this case, though, and the phone disconnecting was that there were points in time within the conversation after George Zimmerman saw Trayvon Martin and began watching him, that the phone hung up and that you dialed Mr. Martin back or that he dialed you back.
Yes, sir.
And then there were points in time where you would remember what was happening after the call was reconnected.
Yes, sir.
It's your recollection that while at the mailbox, that's when the phone hung up at least once?
Yes, sir.
And before that, after Mr. Zimmerman was keeping his eye on Trayvon Martin, do you remember the phone hanging up and having to reconnect?
Yes, sir. As he began walking back home to try to lose George Zimmerman or George.
First, before you get to that, we were using this point where Trayvon Martin says to you that Mr. Zimmerman is watching him. So from that point, you've said the phone did cut off a couple of times after that. But think this first. Before that point, you remember talking to Trayvon Martin after he entered the complex and having the phone disconnected.
Yes, sir.
Where was he and when in the conversation did that take place?
The Mela area. The Mela area.
The only time you remember the phone disconnecting prior to learning from Mr. Martin that George Zimmerman was keeping his eye on him was, well, what you believe to be when Mr. Martin was at the mail area.
Yes, sir.
And after that, so after Mr. Martin left the mail area, as best as you know, and began walking toward where Trayvon was staying,
Yes, sir.
did the phone cut off again?
Yes, sir.
She's getting mad.
And then did you call him back?
Yes, sir.
And then after you called him back, that was in fact the last call of the evening between you and Mr. Martin.
Yes, sir.
That's the call that you cut off.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me.
The call that you lost or that was disconnected before the last call was when Mr. Martin was
back.
walking toward where he was staying.
Yes, sir.
And he had told you at that point that the man was in the car,
Yes,
the
sir.
man was on the phone,
Yes, sir.
and that he had decided to go ahead and go on home.
Yes, sir.
And you told him to do that, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you told him to run.
Yes, sir.
And as far as you know, he did.
Yes, sir.
And at the point that he ran, Mr. Zimmerman was still in the car.
I don't know about that, sir, because he told me the man started following him, sir.
Well, let's break it down step by step. At the point that you told Trayvon Martin to run, your understanding from piecing it all together was that Trayvon Martin was headed towards the back of where his father was staying,
He's going to
run from the back,
Yeah.
which means to go in the back of the house as opposed to the front.
Yes, to try to lose the man who was following him.
Gotcha. So at that point, when he was walking and decided to go on home,
Yes,
that
sir.
Mr. Zimmerman was still in the car,
Still following him, sir.
in the car,
Yes, sir.
and that Mr. Zimmerman was on the phone.
I didn't know about the phone, sir.
I thought you said that Trayvon Martin
That's
told
when he
you
was
this
watching
guy's,
him. That's when he was watching him. Trayvon told me the man was just on the phone watching him.
so Trayvon Martin had told you that when he noticed the man watching him, that the man was in a car and that the man was on the phone.
He was watching him. Yes, sir.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
And that he started walking in the direction of his home
Yes, sir.
and that the man followed him.
Yes, sir.
And at
Kept
that,
following.
yes, in the car.
Yes, sir.
And that you had a conversation with Mr. Martin where you told
She
him,
looks like
just
she's
run
gonna
on
fall
home.
asleep. She doesn't even
Yes,
care.
sir.
And as far as you know, he did, correct?
No, sir. He had made, I told him run home. And then he said no, no is no. And then second day he come and tell me he's gonna make a run from the back area where his father is. Yes.
Let's break that down just a little bit. So at the point
Sorry, I was eating.
that
Probably hear it.
he says, the man's following me,
Yes, he was trying to lose the man.
let's break it down this way.
Oh my
Mr.
God.
Martin leaves what you think is the mail area and
Can
walks
we
in the
not-
direction of where he stayed.
Sir.
Break it down anymore.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, Mr. Zimmerman was still in his vehicle.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Martin continued to walk,
Yes, sir.
and he observed and told you that the man's following him in the car.
Yes, sir.
And then you said, well, run.
Yes, sir.
And he did run.
From the back area to try.
Well, he wasn't he was on the street or on the sidewalk in front of Mr. Zimmerman's car at the point that he decided to run.
I don't know what I would
And he ran.
do.
Yes, sir.
in this
Back
situation,
area to try
I
to
couldn't
lose.
sit there and play on my phone.
You don't know whether he ran in a direction where you could only travel by foot or whether you
It
could
would
drive.
be
I don't live in that area.
Agreed, no. What you knew at that point, though, was that Mr. Zimmerman was still in his vehicle, probably still on the phone, because Trayvon Martin never said he wasn't. And
There's room to speculate as to what Mr. Zimmerman was doing or not regarding the phone.
So say, rephrase the question, please.
Mr. Martin
Jeremy?
never said he wasn't on the phone.
The only time that Trayvon told me the man was on the phone when he was at the middle area. That's the only time. I never knew about he was still on the phone. I never knew about that. He never told me about that.
Right, so,
He just told me the man started following him.
and that he was on the phone, and he never told you that he wasn't on the phone,
No.
but he was still in the car.
Yeah.
And,
Yes, sir.
and then that you said, well, run, and he ran, correct?
Yeah, from the back area to the
That's
truck.
what's confusing. When you say ran from the back, are you saying that at the point that he decided to run,
Yes.
that he decided to run from where he was to the back of where he was staying?
Yes.
And you don't know what direction he took to head that way,
No, sir.
because you don't know where he was at the point that he decided to run.
No, sir.
But you do know that he ran,
Yes, sir.
And you could tell because you could hear the wind.
Yes, sir.
And then the phone cut off.
Yes, sir. I think, yes. Yes, sir.
We have been over
So at that point, you knew that he was
this.
running.
Yes, sir. When I called
I
back.
don't
Right, well, let me take it a
know
little slower. So at the point that he
how
ran, you knew he
many
was running.
times
Yes, sir.
You didn't know if he was running around on the
that
street or
we have
sidewalk
to
where
go
Mr. Zimmerman could continue to
this.
follow him in the vehicle, or whether he ran through a cut-through or something where no vehicles.
This
Mr.
is
Zimmerman was doing, she has some knowledge, Mr. Trayvon Martin's telling.
Well,
bloody
it would be
blah,
speculation if she,
blah,
you have
blah,
to ask
blah.
her what she knows, what she thinks somebody else may have been doing.
Yes, of course. What I'm focusing on was at the
He's
point
been
that Trayvon Martin.
speculating this whole
You have that
fucking
point pretty clear in
time.
your mind, correct?
Yes, sir.
You don't know whether he ran around on the street that he'd been walking on, or
No,
whether
sir.
he ran through a part of the community where you could.
No, sir. I told you. When he ran the phone, lost
I
contact.
told you.
Y'all,
No,
so
sir.
I
I
had called
told
back
you.
in.
So at the point that he ran, the phone cut off,
Yes, sir.
and then you called back.
Yes, sir.
And how long was it in between you losing the connection and you calling back?
I don't know, sir.
Well, do you think the phone was shut off by
She
somebody? You
would
didn't hang up,
just
right?
like to
No, sir.
be
You have no reason to
done
think that
now.
Trayvon Martin hung up.
No, sir.
So it seemed to you like what had been happening all day, that for no apparent reason, maybe
Oh,
that signal,
no.
the call was lost.
Yes, sir.
So you talked with him then again. Was that a minute, 2 minutes, 5 seconds? Do you have any sense of after he ran, when it was that you talked with Trayvon Martin again?
I don't understand what's your question.
What's your
Go
question?
ahead. Let me show you defendant's 16. It's that call chart that we talked about yesterday.
Yes,
Go
sir.
ahead and take a minute and look at it. Yesterday, you said that as far as you knew, those were accurate times of the calls that you and Trayvon Martin had on February 26th, correct?
Yes, sir.
Because it was represented to you that those times were taken from the actual phone company records.
Yes, sir.
So you don't have any argument with that.
No, sir.
We'll take a look at the second to last call.
Yes, sir.
It began at 6:54:16 p.m. and disconnected at 7:11:47. You see that?
Yes, sir.
The next call picked up at 7:12:06. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And disconnected at 7:15:43. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So let's work backwards. Let's assume that at 7:15:43, the phone cut off when you were describing the interaction between Mr. Martin and Mr. Zimmerman.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So
What
that call had started at
the-
7:12:06, which was a little over 3 minutes, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there weren't any interruptions in that phone call.
No, sir.
No, sir.
And frankly, you don't know at 7:15:43 when the phone cut off, whether it cut off for any reason other than it was just one more lost call.
No, sir.
So look at the other call though, the one before it, where it says it disconnected at 7:11:47. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And that the next call started at 7:12:06.
Yes, sir.
If you do the math and figure out how long it was between 7:11:47 and 7:12:06, to me, that is,
If you need to take a copy of that.
that's about 19 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
So does that seem to you to be about right? That when Trayvon Martin ran towards the back of his father's house while George Zimmerman was in the car, that about 20 seconds elapsed before your call reconnected?
Yes, sir.
So the only time from before 7 o'clock, before any part of this case actually started,
Yes, sir.
you were on the phone with Mr. Martin for all of that time except about 20 seconds.
Yes, sir.
And it was the 20 seconds we're talking about where Mr. Martin had decided to run, and then you reconnected with him.
Yes, sir.
Would this be a good time for a short recess?
Don't even, brief recess, yes. Okay, we're gonna take a 15-minute recess.
Okay. So I lost it. No, I don't know what that is. I'm not here. Hold on, let me find it. That's part 1, part 3, part 4. And so I just put it back on here. It's 8, 9, 10, 10, 10, 11. 11, 11, 12, 13, 13, 14. Come on now.
And then you reconnected
Ah!
with him.
Yes.
Stop it. Oh no, stop it. Oh, there it is. Okay, we're jumping
Gentlemen,
the road
I've gotten
back
some
in it.
information that there may be some confusion as to what occurs when objections are made, so I'm going to go ahead and read to you the instructions that I read this when we began this trial Monday morning, and it's 2.1 preliminary instructions, the portion of which deals with
Jesus.
objections.
Really?
The attorneys are trained in the rules of evidence and trial procedure, and it is their duty to make all objections they feel are proper. When an objection is
Oh,
made,
she's
you
reading
should
it
not
to the
speculate on the
jury,
reason why it is
not-
made. Likewise, when an objection is sustained or upheld by me, you must not speculate on what might have occurred had the objection not been sustained, nor what a witness might have said had he or she been permitted to answer. Does that help clear that up? Okay,
Sure.
thank you very much. Mr. West, you may proceed.
Don't speculate.
Would the clerk please drop the screen? I'd like to display.
Yes.
We're just gonna finish up with this lady, and then that's it. For this one.
See during the witness's testimony, and may I inquire?
Yes, you may.
Ms. Gentile, you see State's Exhibit 1 that appears to be a map, do you not?
Yes,
Oh.
sir.
You take it from your testimony, you don't know what that is.
No, sir.
So I won't ask you to identify anything if you don't know what it is.
Yes, sir.
But I do want to talk with you about where we left off before the break, and
Yes,
that was at the moment.
May I object to that exhibit being on, since witnesses can't identify what it is, there's no purpose in this exhibit being.
Are you going to be questioning about the exhibit?
Your Honor, I want the exhibit on so the jury can put this witness's testimony in the context of what had already been acknowledged to be the community retreat at Twin Lakes.
Okay.
So what I'd like you to do, ma'am, is pick up at the point where we left off before the break, and that was when Trayvon Martin began to run and the phone disconnected, okay?
Sir.
You knew that he was running
Why?
at that point because you could hear wind.
Yes, Mr. West. Yes, Mr. West.
So not only had you told him to run, but you believed that he was running.
Yes, sir.
And that's when the phone cut off.
Yes, Mr. West.
And then about 20 seconds later, you reconnected and you were able to talk with him.
Yes, Mr. West.
And you don't know where he was exactly at that point, correct?
He had told me he's in the back of his father's fiancé house.
So what you believed at that point was that when the call reconnected about 20 seconds later, he was already at the back of where he was
By his father's fiancé house.
by the back of the father's fiance's house.
Yes.
That's where he was staying.
Yes, sir.
And while you didn't know where that was, your sense of it, your belief was that he was close to home.
Yes, sir.
So after he reconnected, that's where he said he was.
Yes, sir.
And then did you continue to talk with him?
Yes, sir.
And I know you think that's where he was, but what could you tell by his voice at that point?
Breathing hard.
He was breathing hard. Okay. Are you sure he was breathing hard, or that might have just been wind noise from the signal on the cell phone?
It was him breathing hard.
And
He sounded tired.
he sounded tired from running?
Yes, sir.
That was your impression.
Yes, sir.
And that he breathed hard,
Yes, sir.
and his voice changed too, didn't it?
Yes,
It
sir.
got kind of low,
Yes, sir.
almost like a whisper.
Yes, sir.
And then he continued to talk with you in that voice for a couple of minutes.
Yes, sir.
And about a couple of minutes later, he said he saw the man again.
Yes, sir.
And he saw, what he told you was the man was close to where he was.
Yes, sir.
And that's when Trayvon Martin decided to say to this man, "Why are you following me for?"
Repeat your question again.
A couple. Could we have that read back? Sorry, I lost track.
Is the question of the answer?
My question.
And that's, okay, and that's when Trayvon Martin decided to say to this man, why are you following me for?
Yes, sir.
And he didn't say it, "Why are you following me for?" He didn't say it, "Why are you following me for?" He said, "Why are you following me for?" Didn't he?
No, sir. Not that kind of way, sir.
It was just a question. "Hey, mister, why are you following me for?"
He didn't say, hey, mister, why you following me for? He just asked a question, what are you following me for? And the man replied in the breathing voice that, what are you doing around here?
We've already been over that, what he said and what you said, he said. But
Yes,
let's
Mr.
focus on that.
Did you finish answering your question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Man.
You may ask your next question.
So, however, you've been talking to Mr. Martin on the phone for a couple of minutes at this point.
Yes, sir.
He was talking kind of low in a whisper,
Yes, sir.
and he said he saw the man close to him.
Yes, sir.
And then he decided to say to the man, "Why are you following me for?"
Objection, asked and answered.
This will be the last time that's asked.
Yes, sir.
And at that point, you heard a response of some sort.
Yes, sir.
Either, "What are you talking about?" or "What you doing around here?"
What are you doing around here, sir?
And that's when you heard what you described initially as a bump.
Yes, sir.
Mr. West, I think
Mr.
you
Delarianda
have,
on April 2nd, down at Sabrina Fulton's home.
Yes, sir.
At one point in the interview,
I think
you said to
you
him,
have made it clear that shows
"So
not
the
a
last thing you heard was some kind of
credible.
noise, like something
You know,
hitting
she's
somebody." And your answer
lying
was yes.
now, she's lying
Is that correct?
then, she was lying at some
Yes,
point.
sir.
Like something hitting somebody, correct?
A bump, sir.
I'll say it again. So the last thing you heard was some kind of noise, like something hitting somebody.
That Trayvon got hit. Trayvon got hit.
You don't know that, do you?
No.
No, sir.
You don't know that Trayvon got hit.
He couldn't. He had.
You don't
to.
know that Trayvon
He-
didn't at that moment take his fist and drive it into George Zimmerman's face. Do you?
No, sir.
What you heard after that, though, when you talked to Mr. Crump, was nothing else. That's when the phone cut off.
Yes, sir.
That's what you wrote in the letter, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's what you told Ms. Fulton earlier in the day on March 19th.
Yes, sir.
However,
That wasn't the truth.
on April 2nd, when you were talking to Mr. Delarianda in Sabrina Fulton's home, with her sitting next to you, when Mr. Delarianda says, "Okay, when you heard that noise, something hitting somebody," you did you hear the man say anything, or did you hear Trayvon say anything? Remember that question?
Yes, sir.
And up until that point, you had never told anyone that after this hit, that you heard anything else, correct?
Yes, sir.
But you said on that day, with Ms. Fulton sitting next to you, "I could hear a little bit."
Yes, sir.
And you said that, "I could just hear, like, I guess, like the headphone, because the headphone, he might got off." Correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Delarianda said, "Okay, what could you hear?" And you said, "Like a little get off some stuff."
Yes, sir.
And that was the first time you'd ever said that to anybody, correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Della Rionda said, could you tell who was saying that?
Yes, sir.
And you said, I couldn't hear it was Trayvon. I couldn't know if it was Trayvon, something like that.
Objection improper.
If you have what she said, you need to read that.
I have to play it. I can't, the transcript isn't accurate enough because of the way it was said. We can mark that and maybe come back and play that.
Can I read it, sir? Can I read it? I'll tell you what I said.
If it has my notes on it, you can disregard
I
those.
don't need your notes. Just let me read.
I'll see if I have one, I think.
She's asked for the transcript so she can tell you what she said. I think that we should try that first.
Okay.
She won't be able to read your handwriting anyway.
It's a multiple page transcript. Let me find the one.
I've got a transcript.
I've never seen that transcript. Do you have an extra copy of that one? I don't know if there it is.
I'm sorry, I have no-
If I could, I don't mind looking at it.
I have no.
Yes, you may.
No? Take them both up there. How's that? May we do that?
Yes, you may.
May I first look at citizens for sure, I want to show that.
Yes, you may. Please don't block the view of the jury or get too close to the witness.
Ms. Gentile, this is a transcript, I believe, of that part of the conversation we've been talking about that I was referring to. And then this is the same part of the conversation from the transcript that Mr. Del Rionda had. Would you just take a moment and look at the pertinent sections of each of those? Yeah, take your time.
This girl can't even read her own words.
Have you had a chance to look at those?
Yes, sir.
So, does that refresh your recollection? Do you remember now what you said?
Yes, sir.
What is it that you said?
I had said it. He had asked me to make it clear.
Right.
He had asked me to make it clear. I don't understand what you had said. To make it clear that you said that you heard get off. I had said, yeah. I heard Trayvon saying get off a little bit. So as I was calling his name.
So the question was, didn't you say to Mr. Del Rionda on that tape recorded interview, when he asked you if you knew who it was, you said,
It was Trayvon. I heard.
I know that's what you're saying today, but I'm asking
Objection
what,
improper.
If you'll read what she said on that day, that would answer that.
He can't.
I'm going to read both of them because there's an issue on that about the witness for straightening out. So according to this transcript that you just saw, When Mr. De La Rionda said, could you tell who was saying that? You said, I couldn't hear Trayvon.
I could hear it. Read the next page, sir.
I got that, but I'm talking about this one now, correct?
Yes, sir.
On the transcript that Mr. De La Rionda has, on page 14, could you tell who was saying that? Your answer was, I could have heard Trayvon. I could have heard Trayvon.
Objection, improper, read the whole part as opposed to only.
Want to complete her answer, please?
Oh, sure. Could you tell who was saying that? I could have heard Trayvon.
Could hear Trayvon.
Could have is what this says.
Trust me, they messed up. I could hear Trayvon.
What you said was, on that recording of that interview that you had a chance to listen to within the last couple of weeks,
I had
you
told
said,
them.
I could.
Again, one at a time. You need to finish your answer, and then you can ask your next question. Don't ask her question while she's trying to finish her answer. Complete your answer, and then
I
we'll have the
had
next
told them.
question.
Because my voice is low, I had told him I could hear Trayvon. Can you read, just read it? You may finish reading this, sir.
On this transcript, it says, could you tell who was saying that?
I didn't write
And the
that.
transcript here says, let me finish
I did
reading.
not write that.
You need to do the same thing. Wait till Mr. West finishes his question before you give the answer. And the reason I have everybody do that is because the court reporter can only take down one person talking at a time.
Yes,
So
sir.
listen to the question.
So according to this transcript, it says, could you tell who was saying that? And your answer was, I could have heard Trayvon. Mr. De La Rionda said, I'm sorry, as if he couldn't hear what you said or understand it. You then said, I could have heard Trayvon.
I would ask that,
And-
thank you, could read the next half of the page, which gives us a complete answer to this issue.
Well, there'll be lots of opportunity. What I would like to do now, though, Judge, is play the recording and let the jury decide what this witness said.
Is it in evidence? Is it in evidence?
I don't think it was pre-marked as in evidence, but we can offer it. We just want to play that part to see if it refreshes
I
this.
understand what you want to do. My question is it in evidence?
No.
And you don't think it is. Then it needs to be marked for, identification. The state needs to say whether they object or not. And
Was Trayvon, or couldn't hear Trayvon, or could have Trayvon, whatever you can tell us that's saying.
Your Honor, I object this not a complete in terms of this witness being able to hear, because the next part, she clears up what it is. The answer, they have cut it off midstream.
That's true, Judge, but the theory is that Mr. De La Rionda walked her right down the path, suggested things to this witness
Okay.
under the circumstances that she just followed along and agreed to.
I asked you, what is your question to, in your question to Ms. Gentiles?
That she said on the recording that I couldn't hear was Trayvon, or couldn't hear Trayvon, or could have Trayvon, whatever you can tell us that's saying.
Your Honor, I object this not a complete in terms of this witness being able to hear, because the next part, she clears up what it is. The answer, they have cut it off midstream.
That's true, Judge, but the theory is that Mr. De La Rionda walked her right down the path, suggested things to this witness
Okay.
under the circumstances that she just followed along and agreed to.
I asked you, what is your question to this witness?
What did she say? What did you say right there?
I could hear Trayvon. Yes.
Let's play it again.
Did you hear the man say anything, or did you hear Trayvon say anything?
I can hear a little bit.
Okay, what could you hear?
I could have just hear like it's like the headphone, cause the headphone he might got off, but I can still hear a little bit
Okay, what could you hear?
like a little get off some stuff,
You heard get off?
like a little get off. Now I call it, but like,
Could you tell who was saying that?
I couldn't know turn on.
I'm sorry.
What exactly did you say there? Could you just tell us exactly what that says?
Could hear Trayvon.
That's your testimony?
Yes, sir.
I understand the answer, and I want to play it from the jury, and let them make up their own mind what she said.
Okay, any objections to this being introduced into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor.
What is the objection?
I objected that she's already stated what it is. I guess they're trying to take that defense argument, just say something different.
Okay, please approach. I don't take speaking objection.
I apologize.
Go
Go
it was
back.
Trayvon, or couldn't hear Trayvon, or it could have Trayvon, whatever you can tell us that's safe.
Your Honor, I object this not a complete in terms of this witness being able to hear, because the next part, she clears up what it is, the answer. They have cut it off midstream.
That's true, Judge. That Mr. De La Rienda walked her right down the path, suggested things to this witness
Okay.
under the circumstances that she just followed along and agreed to.
I asked you, what is your question to this witness?
What did she say? What did you say right there?
I couldn't hear Trayvon.
I could hear him.
Yes.
Let's play it again.
Yeah, what does she say?
Did you hear the man say anything, or did you hear Trayvon say anything?
I can hear a little bit.
Okay, what could you hear?
I could just hear like it's like the headphone, cause the headphone he might got off, but I could still hear a little bit. Like
Okay, what could you hear?
I could look get off some stuff,
You heard get off?
like look get off. Not call it, but like
Could you tell who was saying that?
I could know Trayvon.
I'm sorry.
What exactly did you say there? Would you just tell us exactly what that says?
Could he?
The headphone, cause the headphone he might got off, but I could still hear a little bit. Like
Okay, what could you hear?
I could look get off some stuff,
You heard get off?
like look get off. Not call it, but like
Could you tell who was saying that?
I could know Trayvon.
I'm sorry.
What exactly did you say there? Would you just tell us exactly what that says?
Could hear Trayvon.
That's your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I understand the answer. I don't want to play it from the jury.
I don't know what the hell she said.
Of the section that we're playing, I would then like to ask you some questions after that, okay?
Okay, so the last thing you heard was some kind of noise, like something
Yeah.
hitting somebody?
Yeah.
Okay, and when you heard that noise, something hitting somebody, did you hear the man say anything, or did you hear Trayvon say anything?
I can hear a little bit.
Okay, what could you hear?
I could just hear like it's like the headphone, cause the headphone he might got off, but I could still hear a little bit. Like
Okay, what could you hear?
I could look get off some stuff,
You heard get off?
like look get off. Not call it, but like
Could you tell who was saying that?
I could know Trayvon.
I'm sorry.
I couldn't hear Trayvon.
Okay, let me make sure I understand. You could hear, it was Trayvon saying
Yeah,
that?
that's why I was calling his name.
And he was saying what now?
They're like get off.
Get off?
Yeah.
Is that clear that you were hearing that, or you think you heard that?
Yeah, I can hear it a little bit. Get off, get off. Then the phone just hung up.
Okay, all right. Now, before all this started, earlier in the day, had Trayvon been talking to you, right? So you recognize his voice, right?
Yeah.
And you had heard him on prior occasions, so it was crystal clear this was Trayvon talking to you,
Yeah.
right?
Did you hear that clearly enough?
Yes, sir.
So at one point you said you could hear a little because the headphone mic got off.
Was on the grass, sir.
What? Right, but what you're saying here is the headphone, meaning you think that maybe the
Headset fell.
headset might have fell. That's what you were thinking might have happened?
Yes, sir.
But you believe
She
that
doesn't say words
it
right.
was not in the usual position.
Yes, sir.
And that even though what you think the headset was off or got off in some way,
Yes, sir.
that you could still hear a little bit.
Yes, sir.
And what you said was you could hear a little like get off.
Yes, sir.
And when Mr. De La Rienda said, who was saying that, didn't you say, I couldn't know it was Trayvon, or I couldn't hear it was Trayvon?
I couldn't hear it that well. It was Trayvon. But when I heard get off, and I started calling his name, Trayvon, what's going on?
I couldn't hear that when it was Trayvon, but when I heard get off, and I started calling his name Trayvon.
Couldn't sound like his voice.
Does it sound like his voice?
Yes, ma'am.
It sounded like his voice, or kind of sounded like it?
It sounded like his voice.
So help me understand this better. As far as what you said on the recording, when Mr. De La Rienda said, could you tell who was saying that? Are you saying that what the jury just heard was you saying, I could hear it was Trayvon?
Yes, sir.
And you didn't say, I couldn't hear it was Trayvon, or I couldn't know it was Trayvon?
I said I could hear it's Trayvon. That's how I speak. You cannot hear me that well.
All right, you were having trouble hearing him because he
He had
couldn't.
trouble hearing me.
Now I'm really confused. Are you saying that,
The state attorney had trouble hearing me. Him, next to you. The bald headed?
that doesn't help much, does it?
No.
So, I'm sorry that I'm,
You cannot hear me that well.
all right, you were having trouble hearing him because he
He had
couldn't.
trouble hearing me.
Now I'm really confused. Are you saying that,
The state attorney had trouble hearing me. Him, next to you. The bald headed?
that doesn't help much, does it?
No.
So, I'm sorry that I'm not quite clear on what you're saying. You're saying, first of all, to the jury, that what you said,
Nobody's
Yes, I could
clear on
hear
what the
it
fuck
was
she's
Trayvon.
saying.
I could hear it's Trayvon.
and then he asked you again, and you said, that's why I was calling his name.
Yes,
But by then, the phone was disconnected.
yes.
So you heard, when you gave the,
Like I could see that
When you
she
answered the
would
question you
know
gave
the difference
for the first
between a
time that you heard
stranger's
this little
voice and
get off
Trayvon's voice. Like
on April 2nd,
I could see that she would know,
the phone cut off.
but also
right after
the
you heard
same
get off.
difference.
Yeah.
Like
Not cut off. Like you can hear grass sound, wet grass, and you can hear Trayvon just saying get off, then now it's saying Trayvon, and the phone hung up. Ended. The phone ended. The phone had ended.
the
Ended.
phone had ended.
Ended.
So what you're saying is that after you heard something hitting somebody,
I can't.
then you heard grass.
Repeat the question again.
After you say that you heard something hitting somebody, then you heard grass.
I didn't say that. I didn't say somebody was hitting, somebody I heard get off. That's what I said. I started hearing somebody say, Trayvon saying, get off, sir.
At the beginning of the recording we just played, Mr. Del Rionda said, so the last thing you heard was some kind of noise, like something hitting somebody, and you said, yeah. Do you agree?
And I said, yes, sir.
Well, you just heard it, right? Did you hear that?
No, sir.
No, she didn't.
Could we play that again?
No, sir. Go ahead.
Could we play that part again?
No, sir.
She said no, sir. He wasn't really asking you.
Okay, so the last thing you heard was some kind of noise, like something
Yeah.
hitting somebody?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Is that you?
Yes, sir.
And then when Mr. Del Rionda said, basically after that, did you hear the man say anything or did you hear Trayvon say anything? And you said, I could hear a little bit. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So this is the point where in prior statements, you said the phone cut off, correct?
Yes, sir.
But today, in Ms. Fulton's living room, and he asked you, could you hear anything else? You said, yeah. As a matter of fact, I could hear a little bit, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the first thing you said, well, I could just hear, like, I guess, because the headphone might have come off or you might got off. So you're saying there that you heard the headphone in your mind
Came out.
came off. And then the next thing you heard was grass.
Yes, sir.
Can you describe that for me? When you say you could hear grass or even wet grass, like you said yesterday, could you tell me how wet grass sounds?
Oh my god.
Wet. Leaves
What?
rolling all over.
When you describe the sound as you could hear wet grass, what is it that you actually heard that led you to make that opinion?
Somebody rolling on top of the grass.
Are you
Sir.
saying now that you heard people rolling on the grass?
Especially in progress regular session, what you stated.
You asked her to describe and she gave you what
No,
she could give as a description. It's,
you just don't like it.
Let's hone in on that just a second. So you said in this interview, and then you said today, that after the sound of something hitting somebody, and you think the headphone might have been off, you heard wet grass. And I want to know what it is you actually heard that made you form that opinion.
The headset.
I'm sorry?
The headset. All you can hear is somebody rolling on the headset.
Back
Because
there,
Trayvon had his headset
coughing up a
Are you
lung.
saying now that you heard somebody rolling on the headset?
on top of Trayvon. It had to be on top of Trayvon. That's where his headset be at.
Are you saying that the sound of wet grass that you used to describe this yesterday, as you describe it today, you're saying that you believe that was people rolling around on the ground?
Yes, sir.
And what's that based on? What is the sound you heard that led to that conclusion?
I don't know. What the fuck does wet grass sound like? How are you supposed to explain how wet grass sounds? I don't know. It just fucking sounded
I
like
already did not know how
wet
to
grass.
describe that.
You know how one of those headsets works?
Like that.
Right. So if something brushes against it, you hear just like what you heard here. Right?
Yes, sir.
So it could have been fabric. It could have been wind. It
No,
could have been
no,
a
no.
thousand other things than somebody rolling on the ground, couldn't it?
Yes, sir.
And for that matter, you don't even know what get off means. Whether that means somebody on top saying that the person underneath was saying get off, or somebody was backing up and saying get off, or what,
Very
or
true.
what may have been meant if in fact you even heard it.
I did hear get off, sir.
You don't know.
But you don't know what it meant because you didn't see any of this, correct?
No, sir.
Very true.
And you don't know now how long that took from the point that you heard something hit somebody until you heard the wet grass, until you heard the get off, until the phone disconnected. How long did that take?
I don't know, sir.
Is,
I was not timing.
well, in fact, I take it that you were in your house trying to fix up your hair.
Trust me. Trust me, I had stopped.
Yesterday, didn't you say that when this conversation was taking place,
When it was
you were
ta-
fixing your hair?
Yes. As Trayvon was waiting for the rain to slow down from the melon area. That's what I
At,
said.
at what point then, if any, in this conversation, did you pay particular attention
When I had called back.
when he was sort of whispering in the low voice after
When
he
I
said he
had
lost the
called
man?
back. Yeah, after he finished running.
All right, so were you still working on your hair or did you stop?
No, sir.
Were you paying particular attention at this point?
Yes, sir.
So were you on a handset or Bluetooth at that point?
Bluetooth.
Were you doing anything else other than listening intently to what was being said?
Yes, sir.
What were you doing?
Trying to listen what's going on. I'm trying to listen to Trayvon because I had my Bluetooth on.
You were still at home?
Yes,
Were you
sir.
doing anything else?
I was in the bathroom.
Was the water running?
No, sir.
Why not?
Why need water on?
I don't know, I'm asking.
I'm trying to fix my hair. I don't need the water on. I put the iron down, the hair iron down after I called Trayvon back.
Oh my
And I
god,
called
who
back.
fucking
He answered and told me
cares?
he ran from the back.
You're getting way
So
the
at that
fuck
point,
off
you were still in the
track
bathroom,
Yes,
any
sir.
background noise at
right
all?
now.
No, sir.
And you had stopped fixing your hair and you were listening only to the phone call?
Yes, sir. I had called him back.
Right, and that's when he had stopped running and that he was speaking in this lower, more like whispering voice. Correct?
No, sir. I told you he sounded tired because I had told him keep running. He said he would just walk faster. And I said okay because it sounded to me like he was tired. His voice had changed, sir.
So the way, this was after he had lost the man.
Yes. He
And
ran from the back.
he was tired from running,
Yes, sir.
is what you assumed,
Yes,
as
sir.
if he had run a long way,
Yes, sir.
and that you knew his voice was lowered as opposed to his normal talking voice.
I didn't say his voice was low. I did not say his voice was lower.
You told Mr. Del Riondo on April 2nd that it was.
It sounded like he was tired. That's what I told you.
We'll come back to that in a moment, but I don't want to lose track of what we're doing here. So
Fucking fantastic.
you were in the bathroom, and because of what Trayvon Martin was saying, you were paying more attention at this moment than you had been previously,
Yes, sir.
and that you knew at this point that he had run and that he had lost
Yes,
the man,
sir.
correct?
Yes, sir.
and that his voice had changed,
Yes, sir.
and you thought it was because he was tired from running,
He sounded tired, sir.
and you don't know how far he may have run.
No, sir.
Overruled. That will be the last time for that question.
Judge,
You
can
don't
we
know how far
move
he
the
ran.
fuck
No,
on?
sir.
And you have this conversation with him for a couple of minutes, and then he says he sees the man again.
Yes, sir.
And are you really paying attention now?
I was been paying attention, sir. I was been paying attention, sir. Been paying attention, sir.
So after you're talking to him on the phone, he seems out of breath for a couple of minutes. He says to you, he sees the man again, and you pay particular attention now.
I was been paying attention, sir, when I had called him back.
How is this at 1.5?
So the answer is yes, you were focusing on this.
Yes, sir.
And as he says, he sees the man, and as he confronts him and says, why are you following me? You're really paying attention then.
Objection to this characterization in terms of the work of plan.
Ask her question. Let it be her words.
He confronted him by saying, why are you following me, didn't he?
No objection, Your Honor.
We'll listen to your answer. You may answer.
And he told me to do was close to him.
Right. At that point, he decided to approach this man and say, why are you following me?
Yes, sir.
And he could have just run home if he wasn't there.
He was already by his house. He told me.
Of course, you don't know if he was telling you the truth or not.
Why you need to lie about that, sir?
Maybe if he decided to assault George Zimmerman, he didn't want you to know about it.
That's real retarded, sir. That's real retarded to do that, sir. And you don't know the person. Why a person? Trayvon did not know him.
Okay. What I'm trying to get at is, you're paying attention to this.
That's really retarded.
Somebody or something hit somebody. In all your statements before, you said that's when the phone cut off. And in your statement on April 2nd, you're saying you heard a little get off, get off. And today you're saying it sounded like
This is
somebody
why
rolling on
at
the ground.
1.5,
correct?
it sounds like they're
This
talking
characterization is
fucking
the prior
normal.
statements that should-
Okay. I think
Because
that
he's talking.
Response was because you asked her to
this.
describe what she meant by wet grass.
Jesus Christ. He
Objection
is
sustained.
literally
You may ask your next question.
talking.
And what I'm focusing on now is how long did that take for you to hear all of that stuff going on before the phone cut off?
I don't know, sir. I was in timing it, sir.
What your sense of it? I know that you weren't timing it. You'd never said that before. So when you said it to Mr. Della Rionda, how long do you think it took since you were so concentrating on that?
You may answer the question.
I don't know, sir.
It's been asked and answered. It's all been fucking answered. You're fucking done. Move the fuck on.
But you knew something had just happened.
I don't
Yes,
understand
sir.
what you're doing.
And in the statement on April 2nd is when you said, get off, and it was kind of low.
1:30 a.m.
Yes,
Oh
sir.
shit.
Kind of low for a couple of reasons.
My
One,
bad.
because it wasn't said very loudly, or because the headset was somewhere else.
I don't know, sir. I was in there, sir.
And you don't really know who actually said that, even if it was said, do you?
Yes, sir.
It could have been Trayvon, is what you said, correct?
Yes, sir.
Could have been George.
So at the point, though, that all of that happened,
Could have been Trayvon.
you are saying now that you knew something had taken place.
Yes, sir.
But the reason you didn't do anything about it,
Doesn't necessarily
tell anybody what you had heard,
on.
come forward to the police, is because in your mind, it was justified. Correct?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, it was justified when Trayvon Martin started. That's why you weren't worried. That's why you didn't do anything. It was because Trayvon Martin started the fight and you knew that.
Objection, compound question, badgering the witness. Argument.
You may answer.
No, sir. I had told you before. I did not know this man was out of jail.
I'm
So,
talking,
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'll say it again. After you were concentrating so closely on that last part of the conversation with Mr. Martin, where he's speaking in a lower voice for a couple of minutes, and then he says, I see the man again.
I'm going to object to this characterization as to the time that this witness heard Mr. Martin.
Okay, please rephrase your question.
After Mr. Martin ran and you reconnected with him, you were talking with him for a couple of minutes before he told you he saw the man again, correct?
Yes, sir.
And during that time, he was speaking in this somewhat low, that you considered to be out of breath tone.
Yes, sir.
And you started paying particular attention because he said to you, he sees the man again, or the man's following him.
Yes, sir. You can still hear the wind, sir. That's you can hear the wind, sir. I couldn't hear the wind. That's how I know Trayvon was still walking, sir.
As opposed to hiding.
Yes, sir.
So you think he was walking as opposed to hiding because you could hear wind on this headset,
Yes, sir.
as if he couldn't be standing still and there could also be wind?
Trust me, was not winking. Yes, sir.
At the point, though, where he tells you that he sees the man again, or as he said, the man's right there,
Yes, sir.
he decides to approach the man and say, "Why are you following me for?"
Objection, argumentative, and misstatement of the facts.
Sustained.
No, sir.
The objection's been sustained. We'll wait for another question. Thank you.
There's no question in your mind, is it, that Trayvon Martin, based upon what you said and what he said and what you heard, that he approached the man and said, "Why are you following me for?"
Same objection, Your Honor, also compound question.
Okay, sustained.
May we be heard at the bench, please?
Ask your question again.
You believed at that point that Trayvon Martin approached the man and said, "Why are you following me for?"
No, sir.
You want to explain that?
Trayvon told me the man was behind him and kept being close by him. That told me a lot. Close.
Trayvon told me that the man was behind him and kept being close by him. What do you say after that?
That's a good point. They gave me a point that the man was behind Trayvon. Sir.
So he told you that he could see the man again, the man was behind him,
Yes.
correct?
Close.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
And if he were hiding somewhere and the man walked close to him, they would be close together, correct?
Objection, argumentative, and
Sustained.
In any event, your sense of it was that they got close together at that point.
He got close to Trayvon. Yes, sir.
And you don't know whether the man was approaching Trayvon at that point and getting closer, or whether Trayvon was approaching the man and getting closer.
Trayvon would have told me he'll call me back, sir, if he was going to approach him, sir.
So you're assuming that Trayvon didn't approach the man because he would have told you if he was going to confront the guy, he would call you back when it was over?
Yes, sir.
In any event, you knew something was going to happen, I take it.
No, sir.
You knew that he had said to the man, "Why are you following me for?"
Yes, sir.
And you knew in your mind that it was going to be a fight.
No, sir.
But when you
Maybe an argument.
thought Trayvon Martin would approach a man he'd never seen in his life, and
And
that
I
he
say
would,
Trayvon approached the man, sir.
either way, are you saying that you thought that Trayvon would have the discussion with that guy that he'd never met in his life, didn't know who he was, didn't know anything about him, this creepy ass cracker, and have just a gentlemanly conversation about why you following me for?
The dude was close. The man was close to him, sir. He just,
So Trayvon decided, instead of just running away, to confront this guy.
Objection, argumentative.
Of course it's,
no, sir.
but at the end of all of this, after you heard something hitting somebody, what you
A
thought
bump,
might,
sir.
Hmm?
A bump, sir. A bump.
we played it right at the beginning of this recording. Mr. Delarianda said the last thing you heard was something hitting somebody, and you said yes.
Objection, improper impeachment. Based on the, I'll be back to clarify.
Thank you. You may answer the question.
I don't remember saying that, sir.
Given all of that, whatever it was, whether it was a bump, whether it was somebody hitting somebody, I thought, in fact, that you said that it could have been, for all you know, Trayvon Martin smashing George Zimmerman in the face is what you actually heard.
What?
Yeah, just earlier today.
By who?
By you.
You ain't get that from me?
After all of that happened, you decided not to do anything because you thought it was just a fight and that you didn't need to come to Trayvon Martin's aid, did you?
What? Repeat what your question again, sir.
Whatever that was happening that you were paying particular attention to, you decided that you didn't need to call anybody, call the police, report anything because you thought it was just a fight.
I did call him back, sir.
Of course, but you didn't get an answer. Didn't that make you even more worried?
I called back again, sir.
And I would assume that would heighten,
And I had text, sir.
still no answer.
No, sir.
Couple of calls, a text, and no answer.
No, sir.
And the reason you didn't do anything was because you thought it was just a fight.
And I thought his father was around there.
But you thought it was just a fight because it was one you knew that Trayvon Martin was planning to start.
No, sir. He would have told me, sir. He told me to call him back or he'll call me back, sir.
So you figure then that if Trayvon Martin was getting ready to sucker punch somebody and get in a fight, that he would have told you, "Let me take care of this and I'll call you right back"?
Argumentative, speculation.
Is that what you're saying? That you're saying that if Trayvon Martin was getting ready to assault this man, that he would have said, "Hang on a minute, I'll call you back"?
Same objection, argumentative, speculation.
Just 1 second. Overruled.
No, sir. He would not let me on the phone.
You wouldn't,
No,
you,
sir. No, sir, he would not.
allow me on the phone with him if he was about to have a fight.
I didn't,
Sir.
I didn't understand it. Say that again. What about that he would have told you if he was getting ready to have a fight?
If he was going to confront the man, he would have told me, oh, I'm about to confront the man to see what he wants. He did not tell me that, sir. He just told me he trying to get home, sir. But the man was still following him, sir. So
So you're assuming that if Trayvon Martin were planning to confront this man and assault him, that he would have given you a heads up?
That's just a mischaracterization of what this woman said.
Witness's answer is what it is. And,
Well, has he ever told you that before? That he was going to assault someone and he'd call you back?
no, that's not
Honor, I'll be glad to,
objection. So,
I don't want to make a speaking objection. We've had this issue before.
counsel, please approach.
Oh, because he said, can we approach? So she says, yeah, sure. We sure can. Sure can approach. Cat is a bug. Oh my God, where's the donut done?
In any event, you didn't take any steps or even have any particular concern about what you heard because in your mind it was justified.
I did, sir.
See, but you've been talking to this boy all day long, and then he doesn't call you back. He doesn't text you back. And you're just okay with that, and you just think everything's peachy?
In the
I would have been pissed.
conversation that you had with Mr. Della Rionda on April 2nd,
Like, bug
he asked you
way up yonder.
some questions about whether Trayvon Martin had told you that the man had gotten out of the car. Remember those questions?
No, sir.
Let me take a minute and find the reference.
Long, big, mosquito-looking thing. It's gonna eat me tonight. Find it, kitty cat.
So Mr. Della Rionda said to you in a question, I can read it exactly or paraphrase it, but the conversation was that Mr. Della Rionda asked you,
May I see it, sir? May I see it, sir?
yeah, but let me set the stage, if I might. Mr. Della Rionda said, but did he ever say the guy got out of the car?
I remember, sir.
You don't remember that
Who are you
Mr.
talking
Della,
about?
here's what I'm talking about. That Mr. Della Rionda asked you, did he ever say the guy got out of the car? And your response to him was, you want that too? Do you remember that?
I don't remember, sir.
Where's it at? Yeah, sure.
Let's play.
Now,
So if you please give her a copy. Yes, you may.
Oh, yeah,
All right, let me direct your attention to this paragraph. Ask me to read that. And it's my note here underneath is what I thought I heard your answer was. So I want you to see if you remember that and if that was your answer, and I'll ask you that.
No, sir.
What is it you say no?
That's not what I said.
You did-
That's not what I said. That's your opinion, sir.
All right.
That's what you thought I
On the
said.
paragraph where Mr. Delagrande asked you, did he ever say the guy got out of the car?
Keep reading it, sir.
And I said, the transcript says that you said you want that too. And you're saying you didn't say that? Do
No, sir.
you remember what you said instead?
No, sir. But I did not say that.
You do specifically
Do you
remember
know-
that when Mr.
Do you know
Delagrande
what a
asked you,
transcript
did he ever
is?
say the guy got out of the car, that you did not say in response, you want that too?
No, sir. I did not even say, you want that too. No, I did not say that, sir.
Could we play that portion, please? I think we have a few.
Thank you.
Sentence on you.
Let's just play.
I'm gonna do the rest. I mean, I apologize. I don't think I can speak.
Let's play that part first.
In my impeachment manner, which is my objection.
What is the purpose for it being played, sir?
The jury can't hear for themselves whether or not Ms. Gentile gave the answer that she just denied giving.
She said those were your notes, not hers.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what transcript both sides have. I have somebody's transcript, and they're supposedly different than the transcripts.
Well, Mr. Delagrande's transcript has the witness's response the same way that I do.
Could you show me what page it's on? Because I don't know whose I'm looking at.
Just let the jury hear
Well,
what.
I've asked a question. Could you tell me, first of all, whose transcript do I have?
I gave it to you, it's ours, it does not have an answer on it because it was added in earlier, so what you have just has asterisks, so it's not gonna help you.
Could you please tell me what page?
Down to page 15, may I approach and just take it? The end of the last line of the page is when you both have the owned available.
Okay, I must have a different one.
May I approach one?
Yes. The pages are not numbered.
Here is, and it's when the asterisks are three quotes over here.
I think it's page 14. For impeachment, because your transcript doesn't have an answer.
That's right.
It has
because-
4 asterisks.
Yes, the transcriptionist seemingly couldn't hear it. Mr. Delagrande's
But you're
transcriptionist could, and I believe it's audible enough that the jury can hear it if we just play the recording.
I don't have the other transcript. Is it all possible for me to get a copy of that?
That would be in the state's possession.
Let's see if I've got a clean one. Mine's all.
Just show the board if you like.
I'm sure you didn't find the bug. Oh my goodness. Can we be done?
Ladies and gentlemen, your lunch is here, so I'm gonna, the hungry grumblings I hear in your stomachs will be satisfied.
Okay.
Has any objections to?
This is the last bit of hers.
Yes, sir.
Was it hard for you to talk about this?
Yes, sir.
And in that statement, you especially could attempt to tell what you remember?
I'm objecting now. This is the third in a series of leading questions. This is redirect. It should be direct questions rather than leading.
I'll be right to rephrase it, Your Honor.
Thank you, sustained.
You recall in that statement stating that, I'm sorry, the April 2nd statement that Mr. West asked you about, that Trayvon Martin was running away from the person?
Yes, sir.
And you also made reference that
I think they
Trayvon
cut
Martin
out a
said the
bunch.
man described him as a creepy white.
Object that it is, well, at this point, beyond the scope of the cross-examination and not responsive to one of the issues raised during the cross. And it's also leading.
Overruled, and as to the first 2 objections, as to the leading, I will give a little leeway to get a frame of.
Yeah, they cut some,
You were also
which I'm
asked
fine
about
with because
numerous questions about the interview that you gave me, the statement you gave me when I went down to, and I apologize, me in terms of with an investigator too, down in Miami. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. West asked you about the fact that the state attorney's office from Jacksonville had been appointed by the governor, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. terms of you found out that we were handling the case.
Yes, sir.
And you agreed to speak to me, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in fact, as you stated, 2 cars went to a place where you were at a friend's house and picked you up and took you down to take a statement, correct?
Yes, sir.
You were pretty emotional at that statement, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
Was it hard for you to talk about this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in that statement, you, as best you could, attempted to tell what you remember?
I'm objecting now. This is the third of a series of leading questions. This is redirect. There should be direct questions rather than leading.
I'll be glad to rephrase it, Your Honor.
Thank you, sustained.
You recall in that statement stating that, I'm sorry, the April 2nd statement that Mr. West asked you about, that Trayvon Martin was running away from the person?
Yes, sir.
And you also made reference that Trayvon Martin said the man described him as a creepy white.
Object that it is, well, at this point, beyond the scope of the cross-examination and not responsive to one of the issues raised during the cross. And it's also leading.
Overruled, and as to the first 2 objections, as to the leading, I will give a little leeway to get a frame of reference, and then make sure your questions aren't leading.
Yes, Your Honor. My question is, do you recall Mr. West asking you that Trayvon Martin referred to the man that was following him as a creepy white cracker?
Yes, sir.
I didn't say that. That's a mischaracterization of the testimony.
I'm sustained
You did
because I think
say-
the words were creepy ass cracker.
I apologize. Were the words creepy, pardon my language, creepy ass cracker?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you recall Mr.
Oh,
West
she
asking
thinks
about
that's funny.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also, and to you, is that a derogatory, or is that the way people speak in your culture, your age group?
Objection leading. Suggesting an answer?
Overruled.
Yes, sir.
You also made reference at some point that Mr. Trayvon Martin also referred to the person also with the N-word. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And when I say person, he's talking about the person that was following him, referred to using the N-word.
Yes, sir.
By the way, in that letter, that letter, Defense Exhibit 17, you actually read it, Trayvon Martin's name is misspelled. Were you aware of that?
No, sir.
It's spelled T-R-E-R.
Object is leading.
Overruled.
It's spelled T-R-E-V-O-N. Were you aware of that?
No, sir.
Oh, she spelled his name wrong in the letter. That's sad.
You mentioned also, when asked by Mr. West about the statement that you gave to Mr. Crump by phone, correct? Was that by phone, just to make sure the record? You weren't there in person, or were you?
By phone.
Okay. And Mr. Crump did not ask you specific questions about certain items or certain questions that I asked you specifically on April 2nd. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Overruled.
Did Mr. Crump ask you specific questions like I did?
No, sir.
You were asked by Mr. West in terms of what happened, and you recall in the interview that you gave me on April the 2nd, the statement you gave, you referred to the man approaching Trayvon Martin. It sounded like a bump. Do you recall using the word bump?
Yes, sir.
Objection.
What?
I guess I don't quite understand what's going on here. Is this confronting the witness with her prior statement that he was present for?
What is your objection?
Well, it's leading, and it is improper impeachment. If anything, it's bolstering by a supposed prior consistent statement of some sort.
Overruled on all 3.
Do you recall using the word bump in describing what occurred to Trayvon Martin?
Yes, sir.
I mean, he can't fix
For
what's
the
already
record, you still live, Mr. West asked you about meeting with 2 individuals from FDLE in Miami. You still live in Miami, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You were asked by Mr. West about the phone calls that you had with Mr. Trayvon Martin that day on February 26th. Would you agree that the phone records are the best records about that in terms of the length of the calls, whatever the times are?
Yes, sir.
might have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Do you have any recross?
Thank you, Judge.
Good job.
Ms. Gentile, you were born and raised in Miami, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you spoke English at home?
What age you're talking about, sir?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Are you saying that English is your third language? That you spoke Creole and Spanish first?
I spoke 3 languages first. I learned how to speak 3 languages first, but Creole was the first one.
Does your mother speak English?
Not that well, sir.
Does she speak English?
Not that well, sir.
I understand she may have an accent or some limitations, but do you speak to her in English?
Sometimes, sir.
And if you're not speaking to her in English, you're speaking to her in Creole?
Yes, sir.
And your father, do you speak to him in English?
Yes, sir.
And when you went to school as a child, kindergarten, did you speak English at school?
Yes, sir.
And have you spoken English to your teachers and classmates in school up through today?
Yes, sir.
Are you claiming in any way that you don't understand English?
I understand you. I understand you. I do understand English.
My question is, when someone speaks to you in English, do you believe that you have any difficulty understanding it because it wasn't your first language?
I understand English really well.
You've spoken it all your life.
Yes, sir.
And there's nothing that I've said to you today in English that, or yesterday, that you haven't understood, correct?
No, sir.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about is Mr. Deliranda said in reference to Trayvon Martin saying creepy ass cracker and using the N-word, that people speak like that in your culture. Did you hear that?
Yes, sir.
Well, what culture is that where people describe other people as creepy ass crackers?
Pervert. A pervert.
A culture?
Do you understand what I mean by the culture that you were raised in, the culture that
The
you live in?
area I was raised in? What you trying to say?
Right. I'll say it this way. Do people that you live around and with call white people creepy ass crackers?
Not creepy, but cracker, yeah.
So the creepy is the pervert part that you were talking about?
Yeah.
So forget that for a second. You're saying that in the culture that you live in your community, people there call white people crackers.
Yes, sir.
And do they use the N word regularly?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying, so did Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin referred to white people as crackers, correct?
I don't recall, sir.
Okay, thank you, nothing else.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
May Ms. Gentile be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. You may be excused. If the state will please call your next witness.
We're going to ask that you remain under subpoena.
Okay, we're going to have to, well, she's going to return to Miami. Will we have notice before she would be called back? The state's releasing them from their portion.
We would like a few minutes to proffer some testimony is what I'm thinking. It could be at the end of the day today, or it could be at another time later in the proceeding.
Okay. Then I need to know if the defense wants, has any objections to her returning to her home and then bringing her back.
Or could we do it at the end of the day? And rather than inconvenience the jury, just have Ms. Gentile wait until the end of the day? Or
Okay, if counsel will please approach.
Could we not bring her back? Okay, that's the end. That is the end of her. That is the end of today. That is the end of this video. This is a very, very long video. That's all. I don't really know what they got out of this besides making her look really, really sad and confused and angry and all of the emotions and all of the things. I don't know. Where can they go from here? Anyway. Okay. But we will continue with day 4 in the next video. So join me, like and subscribe. Do all of those thingies. Okay. I see you in the next video. Later.